Committee will come to order. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, is it the policy of your office for U.S. attorneys to use prosecutorial quotas?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty hearing.
Okay, I'll get right on top of this thing. Is it the policy of your office for U.S. attorneys to use prosecutorial quotas?
To prosecute?
Yeah, do you have any prosecutorial quotas system in place?
No.
None whatsoever. That'd be anathema to your office then, right? I mean, it's not a policy. So would you
we don't, correct, we do not have quotas.
Right. And so would it be consistent with that when you have a prosecutor said that he wants to prosecute at least 2,000 people who are alleged to have committed a certain type of crime?
So look, I think you're referring to the January 6th question.
I'm just asking you, would that be consistent with your office's policy if somebody said we're going to get up to 2,000 people on a particular crime? Is that consistent with your policy? I
think what that U.S. Attorney was referring to was a prediction for how many more cases would still be brought because the court had asked how many more people have been
filed a letter with the court saying that we're looking at upwards of 2,000. We've got 1,200 more that we think we're going to get. So you don't do that for anything else, right? So you don't have anything like tax fraud. You're not saying, okay, we're going to have so many people that we want to get for tax fraud, so many people we want to get for lying on federal firearms application.
If a court asks us what the likely workload will be based on prosecutions and investigations that are pending, the U.S. Attorney is obligated to respond.
Did you guys provide any reference of the number of people you thought you would prosecute who were involved in the 2020 summer riots of the burning of the Portland courthouse while there were still people inside those courthouses? You didn't ever file with the court anything, say, oh, we think we're going to have another 300, 400, whatever it may be, because you didn't file those charges, did you?
I'm sorry, I'm not following. I believe that
I'm sure you're not.
The number that you're asking about was...
Let me ask you this question.
...projection that the court had asked the U.S. Attorney to make.
Let's switch topics. Maybe this one would be easier to follow, I suppose. Is it the policy of the DOJ to provide advance notice to subjects before conducting a search for evidence?
It totally depends on the circumstance.
If the circumstance were that you had a guest house where the U.S. Attorney, Deputy U.S. Attorney saying, well, we know that we suspect there's a lot of evidence there, but we're not going to really follow that up. And calls the attorney from the other side saying we were going to do a search warrant. Would that be consistent with your policy?
Okay, again, I know this is no hypothetical, and I don't know the facts of this case, and I don't know what happened, and I believe the events you're talking about, as reported in the press, occurred under the previous administration. So
no, that event didn't happen in the previous administration. Let's talk about that. I mean, you keep saying this happened in the previous administration. But let's talk about this for just a moment. You keep saying, I don't know what happened there, but I'm going to opine when it happened. Do you see the fallacy of that, the inconsistencies? I don't know when it happened. I don't know what happened because I'm not involved, but it happened under the previous administration. That's so logically fallacious.
I'm sorry, I'm not following what's...
Yeah, I know you're not following. So the question is, You've got one of your deputy U.S. attorneys calling the attorney on this side saying, look, we're going to go to these two places, probably go in the next couple of days. And, of course, then ultimately the search warrant is called off. I just want to know, is it consistent to call up people and where you know that they've got boxes of information, or you suspect they have boxes of information? That's why you got the warrant. That's why you're going to go look. And you give them a heads up so they can move those boxes of information. Would that be consistent with DOJ policy?
I'm just going to say again, you're asking me actually to comment about allegations in a particular case about...
No, I'm not. I'm asking you, is that consistent with your overall policy? Forget Delaware and what they did and that they actually did that. Let's just talk about generic policy.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about Mar-a-Lago. I may not have understood then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, la-di-da. So when we're talking about this, when we're talking about your general policy, is it your policy? Is that acceptable when you suspect that there are movable items to call up and say we're gonna be there to look?
Yeah, there's no policy on this question. The strategy and tactics to be used to preserve evidence are left up to the investigators and offices on the ground. Sometimes it would be a serious mistake to call up. Sometimes it would not.
Here once again, you don't know what happened in the Hunter Biden case because that's somebody else is doing it. But you can be sure of the timing of when all this took place. That is one of the biggest oddities of your testimony today. I yield back to the gentleman from Colorado.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you for your decades of faithful service to our country, to our Constitution, and to the rule of law. Thank you for putting up with this today. The American people are watching. They know what's going on here. This is a gross misuse of your time, your team's time, and our time. It is a shameful circus. It has a goal. The goal is to spew lies and disinformation, ultimately to tear away at the confidence of our independent institutions, in your case today, our very important Department of Justice. That's the exact MO of a former president. Tear away at the confidence of our independent institutions, whether it's our electoral system, the Department of Justice, the judiciary, and independent news media. The American people are watching this sham. But it's not just a circus, it's dangerous, and you know that, and you have mentioned that. I believe that these fictions and fantasies are dangerous. Dangerous for you and the 115,000 public servants with whom you work. Dangerous for national security. Dangerous for communities' security. Dangerous for the rule of law and our Constitution. All at the same time of a looming shutdown. The other side of the aisle cannot govern. And so they have this hearing, which was supposed to be oversight, and use it as a big distraction because they are failing to govern. Imagine if we go into a shutdown. What does that say to your members of your department? What does it say to our service members, U.S. troops who would be training, fighting without pay and without confidence in this country's governing ability? It's a great distraction. So let me pivot to something I care about, and I know you and your department cares about. It is Recovery Month. And for families like mine with a member in recovery, every month is Recovery Month. So I thank you for what you are doing on the fentanyl crisis, the overdose crisis that has claimed 110,000 lives in a single 12-month period. 300 souls a day, every day. Souls who have died while we were in this hearing, every day. What is the department doing to combat the trafficking, to combat the amount of fentanyl on the ground? As DEA has said, there's enough fentanyl on the ground right now to kill this entire population multiple times over. Tell us about your important work in fentanyl.
Well, Congresswoman, let me begin by saying I share your personal concern and grief over this. I have met with the families of children, of teenagers, of elderly people who have become addicted to fentanyl and who have died from fentanyl. Everything you're saying is correct, and it's a catastrophe for the country. So as a consequence, the Justice Department has poured its resources, particularly from DEA, with FBI assistance as well, and with fugitive arrests by the Marshal Service and with gun tracing by the ATF, into the entire process by which fentanyl reaches the United States. So we have sanctioned the precursor companies in China. We have indicted some of them for their violations. We have arrested some as far off as in Fiji and brought them back to the United States. We have traced these precursors to Mexico, where they are made into the fentanyl pills. Fentanyl costs about 10 cents to make. It can be sold on the street in the United States between $10 and $30. You can see what the enormous profit motive is here. So we must stop the cartels themselves. I have, as I said, traveled to Mexico twice in order to work with our counterparts in the military and law enforcement there.
I thank you for all of that. I want to just pivot once, and I want to do anything I can to partner with you on this issue so that we stop losing people. I traveled recently with the Foreign Affairs Committee to The Hague, met with the extraordinary folks, the top prosecutor and his able team. They were very complimentary of the Department of Justice and your work. Can you tell us about your important role, or America's important role, in war crimes, especially in light of your powerful history?
Yes, I'm happy to. So I have traveled to Ukraine twice and to meet with the prosecutor general there. And I'm going to meet with him again this week here, and he has met with me several times here. The Justice Department is pursuing the war crimes from Russia's unlawful and unjust invasion of Ukraine to help to investigate war crimes over which we have jurisdiction, to help the Prosecutor General in Ukraine investigate those prosecutions. I was, I believe, the first cabinet member ever to visit The Hague, the International Criminal Court of Justice, and to meet with Karim Khan, who is chief prosecutor, to talk about our cooperation in respect to the investigations that they are doing. I've assigned a Justice Department prosecutor to the investigatory body that's been set up in The Hague for the crime of aggression. And she is there now working with the ICC and with Europol and Eurojust. And I've assigned a prosecutor to our embassy in Kyiv to work with our ambassador there and to work with the Prosecutor General's office there.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing that answer to go on, because it is critically important. America is indispensable, and your work is indispensable. Thank you, sir.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Attorney General, do you support the consent decree that I believe was put in place in the city of Minneapolis?
I'm sorry, do I support the...
Do you support the consent decree that was put in place with the police department of Minneapolis?
The one was put in place by the federal government? Yes.
Yes. Do you support fewer cops on the street?
Do I support...
Fewer cops on the street?
No, I don't support fewer cops on the streets.
That's what's happening as a result of what's
I don't think that's a consequence of the consent decree.
Do you support...
Minneapolis has been losing police officers for many years.
Do you support more crime?
Do I support more crime?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
So there was just a hearing in Minnetonka, Minnesota, a tiny suburb of Minneapolis, just I think this last week, where they're beside themselves with the amount of crime that continues in Minneapolis since the riots of 2020. And I would point out to you that I had an officer in my district. I lived right across the border in Wisconsin, or that's where my district begins. A police officer was shot to death as a result of a weak on crime prosecutor in St. Paul and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Guy served only 4 years for a violent crime. Do you think that that's a problem?
If an officer is shot to death, that is certainly not an appropriate sentence. That's outrageous. Let me be clear, we are doing everything we can to assist Minneapolis. We have a very aggressive U.S. attorney who's brought a number of RICO and Vicar cases.
Let me continue. I got a real short period of time here.
Sorry.
In regards to disrupting drug networks, why do you think there's so much fentanyl coming into the country?
Because it costs 10 cents to make, and it can be sold for $30.
So Sheriff Mark Daniels from Cochise County, Arizona, sat right where you were at a few months ago, and under oath he said the reason there is such a drastic increase in fentanyl coming into the country is because on January 20th of 2021, open borders policies were announced by President Biden. Have you expressed concern about those open borders policies that have led to this rapid increase in the amount of fentanyl coming into our country?
I can't associate myself with the conclusion reached by the sheriff, although I can certainly commiserate with the concern.
So the sheriff is incorrect.
Look, the cartels in Mexico are bringing this causing this drug to be transmitted into the United States, and we were doing
Terrific.
everything we can to eliminate that incentive.
Yeah, you're not going to do it on doing that. Mr. Chairman, just so we're real clear here, this is the same answer we received from Secretary Mayorkas a couple months ago when he was in denial about a sheriff who lives, one of the most reputable sheriffs you'll find in the United States of America, sitting down there on that southern border. He sees it every day. He saw it working in 2020 because he told me when I was down there. And now he says it is not working, and it started January 20th of 2021. You can pretend that you're dealing with fentanyl. You're not, because the borders are wide open. Do you believe, I'm going to shift to combating gun violence. Do you believe that a prohibited person that acquires a gun illegally and disposes it in a dumpster where a criminal or an innocent child could gain access to it should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law?
This is no longer a hypothetical question. You're referring to a specific case which is now in judicial determination before a court of law. It's not appropriate for me to comment on that case.
So, for the record, Mr. Chairman, let's understand that the same prosecuting attorney who is now the special counsel gave a sweetheart deal to that person. And yes, you are correct. We're referring to the president's son. He got a sweetheart deal, and the judge was smart enough to smell a rat when she saw it, and she said, you guys go back to the drawing board. That same special counsel is in charge of this investigation. Isn't that correct, Mr. Chairman? Absolutely. I want to close real quickly with this. There was a World Naked Bike Ride in Madison, Wisconsin, just a couple months ago, and I sent you a letter 2 months ago asking if you had a problem with that because it exposed a 10-year-old girl by the race organizer, the bike organizers, to pedaling around Madison, Wisconsin naked. Do you think that's a problem? And why did you not answer our letter from 2 months ago?
I'm sorry, I'll have to ask the Office of Legislative Affairs to get back to you about this.
Does it typically take 2 months to be able to answer questions like this?
It sounds like you're asking about a question about state and local law enforcement. We get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters. I'll ask the Office of Legislative Affairs where that letter is.
State and local law enforcement would not act. We were hoping you would. It's obvious you're not. I yield.
Gentleman yields back.